airplanes to self-separate to within a couple of centimetres. Is there any... Why are the airlines determined to do this collectively? It's as if we want mutual mediocrity instead of one airline saying, you know what, I want quality. Is there any opportunity, do you think? I mean, will fortune favour the brave in that way?
Look, the system isn't set up to do that. We have to fly, we file our flight plans have to be approved by national ATCs and by Eurocontrol. I don't understand the technical. I mean, this is not just Ryanair. The one area where all of Europe's airlines agree under A4E is the need for urgent reform of ATC. The Single European Skies has been a 21-year shambles. It has been an abject and utter failure. It's been so bad, spectacularly bad, that they've relaunched it with a Single European Sky 2. SES was such a shambles, we're going to have a second one. It's like having a sequel to the first horror movie.
A second horror film.
Abandon it. It's a waste of time. It is never going to get delivered. They're going to spend the next 21 years talking about it, and nothing will happen. There is some prospect, I think, of having much more practical solutions. Europe has a duty to protect the freedom of movement under the Treaty of Rome. Freedom of movement means freedom of movement by rail, sea, but also by sky. Protect the overflights. If you could protect the overflights, it doesn't take away somebody's right to strike. Strike away. But the national citizenry takes the hit if the French want to have a recreational strike on Fridays or Sundays during the summer. Let the French take the day. But you can't be expecting the Irish, the Spanish, the Italians, the Germans, who are just doing innocently overflying France, to take all the hits. And that's what happens at the moment. The French, who are very clever, protect their domestic flights with minimum services, and everybody else's flights get cancelled.
Yeah, right.
So I think we should abandon SES. It's a shambles. It's yet another magnificent Brussels failure. Push harder for protection of overflights during strikes, and then separate the upper airspace and give Eurocontrol. And here's where Eurocontrol has a huge role to play. Give Eurocontrol control of the upper airspace.
Right.
Then we would have a huge cost saving. You'd have flight time savings, and you'd have a huge environmental saving as well. I mean, the environmental... every time I come to Brussels with this MEPs and everybody waffling on about SAFs, all of which are very valuable, but SAFs might get to 2% of our fuel, might account for 2% of fuel by about 2030. We could save 10% of our fuel in 2024 if you simply reformed European ATC by separating the upper airspace and protecting overflights.
Indeed, let's move to SAFs and let's move to the environment more generally, because even if there's been no movement on the Single European Skies at a European level, and I think, to be fair, the European Commission is working awfully hard but is meeting a brick wall in the member states, there has been progress on the SAF side, Fit for 55, the Refuel EU, etc. Michael, you said earlier that you think that inevitably fares are going to have to go up to cover some of these things. Do you think that's right? And if so, by how much?
Well, firstly, let's go back, because I wouldn't be fair to the Commission. I mean, if the Commission's role here is wait to get agreement from national governments, then the Commission should be disbanded because it serves no purpose. You would never have deregulated air travel in the 1980s if you were waiting for the agreement of the French and the German governments to deregulate and liberalise air transport. The Commission and the Parliament exists to impose some change on national governments. And this is a European competence. The freedom of movement is a European competence. So let's not be fair in the Commission. The Commission has sat on its ass for 21 years. It's a Commission proposal of Single European Skies, and they've delivered not 1 inch of progress on it. Sorry, on to the next part of the question, which was, I've completely forgotten.
Sustainable aviation.
Environment and the increase, the costs that's going to be.
Look, I think it is inevitable over the next 5 years. I mean, I've said, the end of low fares, we're not at the end of low fares. Low fares are not over. But I do believe some of our really crazily low promotional fares, $9.99 fares, you will not see those again while oil remains up at around $100 a barrel. I think it's inevitable over the next maybe 5 years. Our average fare, which was €40 last year, may creep up towards about €50 over the next 4 or 5 years. I think flying is going to become a little bit more expensive. But and some of that will be as oil prices fall, I think environmental taxes will rise. We support environmental taxes. I think it's important we say that. Mm-hmm. Our customers support environmental taxes. In fact, they pay more environmental taxes, Ryanair passengers, than any other passenger group in Europe. Why? Because 100% of our passengers are short-haul point-to-point. We have the smallest allocation of free ETSs. And the transatlantic, the long-haul traffic, which accounts for just 6% of Europe's traffic, but 55% of our emissions, is exempt, pays diddly squat, nothing. and we exempt then the most polluting flights, which is transfer flights. The minimum thing Europe should be moving on now is, let's not wait for SAS. Tax on a fair basis, everybody should pay their fair contribution. They've already tried to claim it's illegal. The European courts have said, no, you can tax long-haul flights on the same basis. You just got to tax the Russians and the Chinese and the Americans the same way we tax the Europeans. And if you don't like it, don't fly here. Everybody should pay their fair share.
So
we shouldn't be asking the Europeans, or particularly the Europeans who live in the peripheral countries, the Irish, the poor Irish, the Portuguese, the Greeks, the Spanish, and the Italians, to pay it all, so that you can have the rich Americans and the rich Chinese exempt. That is a disgrace, and it's something that needs to be transformed now.
What's the best way to do that? Is it a fuel tax?
I think there should be. No, I mean, I see no reason why we don't have either an environmental tax, either by mileage or on fuel uplifts. We do one or the other. I mean, every time, and I love Carsten and Lufthansa dearly, but he keeps going on about leakage, carbon leakage, like it was the end of civilization as we know it, because somebody might move through Istanbul instead of through Frankfurt. You tax if you're going through Istanbul, you should pay your ETS as well.
Yeah.
But there is absolutely no argument for exempting long-haul flights and asking, in many cases, the poorest Europeans, the people who are the most price-sensitive, families going on holidays, well-deserved short-haul holidays, to pay all of the environmental taxes. And that's what's happening at the moment. Last year, Ryanair passengers paid 640 million euros in environmental taxes. Our average fare was 40 euros. Our average environmental tax per passenger was €4.50. Our passengers pay more environmental taxes than Lufthansa's passengers, Air France passengers, anybody other passengers in Europe. And it is time for this regressive taxation to end. Everybody should pay their fair share.
Do you think that the tax will have an impact on the passenger volumes? I mean, that's the classic model. Prices go up, demand comes down.
The passenger volumes are rising. We're growing like gangbusters because we're so much lower cost and lower price than everybody else. So that's not going to work. But it is indefensible that people paying the highest airfares, which is long-haul passengers, are exempt from a fair share of environmental taxes.
Is SAFs the answer?
It's one. I mean, look, we all are committed to getting to zero carbon by 2050. The more immediate ones are technological innovation. We're spending 20 billion in the next 5 years buying 200 new aircraft that carry 4% more seats but burn 16% less fuel and reduce, as Eddie said, emissions by 40%. We need ATC reform. With ATC reform, I mean, the figure is given as 10. I think you'd get 20% fuel saving, flight time savings, and that would have a significant bearing on it. And then SAFs have a role to play. But, the supply of SAFs will be a much longer-term rollout. But let's do the immediate things first, which is new technology, reform ATC, protect the overflights, and then let's let all the other elements, which is SAFs, and SAFs have a role to play. We've signed up more SAF supply agreements than any other airline in Europe. We have a deal with Neste in Holland, OMV to cover SAF supplies in Germany, Austria, and some of the Eastern Central European countries. We're going to sign up a deal with Shell tomorrow on even further supply. But our supply of SAFs is less than half of 1% of our total fuel bill.
Well, indeed. I was going to ask Neil,
the volume is still the challenge.
The 160 tonnes that you talked about in the video, how many minutes of your operations will that cover?
It's a small number. And the problem, as Michael said, is they just can't